Hello, today we're going to be talking about marking the text and how it applies to word problems in mathematics. You should have a note sheet in front of you that will match my presentation exactly. So just follow along as we go through and please fill in the blanks. Also, as we go through, I'll prompt you to pause the video so you'll have a moment to practice what I've demonstrated for you. On our first slide, we're going to go through the steps of marking the text and how that leads to the transition of writing an equation. We're going to go ahead and talk about it first, and then on the next slide you'll be able to refer back to the steps as we actually practice marking our text. Step number 1 when you're marking the text is to read the problem. After you read the problem, or maybe even have read it a couple of times, we're going to underline the question. We need to identify what is it that we're trying to find and underline that within the word problem. Step number 3, after we have underlined the question and identified what we're trying to find, we are going to box the math terms. Math terms can take many different forms. Below I've listed a few that are some very common terms that you'll come across. Words such as per, is or of, for each or every, less or more, change and difference, or half and twice. Now, of course, there are many more words that you might come across when you're doing word problems. However, these are some common examples. After you box the math terms, we are going to replace them with the appropriate symbol and or mathematical representation. Step number 4, we cross out unimportant information. So after we've underlined the question and boxed the math terms, replacing them with appropriate symbols, we can then eliminate any excess information that's not going to help us as we proceed through our work. After marking the text, we proceed to part 2, which is actually writing the equation to solve. The first step is to assign the variables. After that, if applicable, we can draw a picture. And then, finally, we write the equation and proceed to solve. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide and practice marking the text and writing an equation. Our second slide is located in the top right-hand corner of your notes. As I go through, I'm going to be referring to the steps on the previous slide, which are on your notes right in front of you. You can follow along there. Step 1 is to read the problem. A garden is in the shape of a triangle. The perimeter of the garden is 60 feet. The side of the garden closest to the house is 12 feet long. Of the 2 missing sides, one of them is twice as long as the other. Find the lengths of the 2 unknown sides. Just for clarity, we'll go back and read it one more time. A garden is in the shape of a triangle. The perimeter of the garden is 60 feet. The side of the garden closest to the house is 12 feet long. Of the 2 missing sides, one of them is twice as long as the other. Find the lengths of the 2 unknown sides. Step 2. We need to underline the question. When I read through this, I saw in the very last sentence it was asking us to find the lengths of the 2 unknown sides. So I'm going to underline that as my question. Now that we've underlined the question, we'll move on to step 3, which is boxing the math terms. Reading through the first sentence, I see a garden is in the shape of a triangle. Now you might think of triangle as a mathematical word. That's true, but it's more of a figure. And we're looking for operators, words that are going to help us build our equation. So we are going to move on to the next sentence. The perimeter of a garden is 60 feet. Now that word is does have a meaning, and it represents equality. So this is going to be our equal sign. The side of the garden closest to the house is 12 feet long. So there's another is, which is another equal sign. Of the 2 missing sides, one of them is, another equals, twice as long Twice means 2 times as long as the other. Find the lengths of the 2 unknown sides. Now that I've identified my math terms and boxed them, and I've also replaced them with the appropriate mathematical symbols or representations, I'm going to go back and eliminate any unnecessary or unimportant information that's not going to help me by crossing it out. Reading through this question, a garden is in the shape of a triangle. What's important in this sentence is that we're talking about the shape of a triangle. So I'm going to go back and cross out everything except for the word triangle. So we have a triangle. The perimeter of the garden, or of the triangle, is 60 feet. So I kept the word triangle, and I kept that the perimeter is 60 feet. Then, in addition to that, I'm told that the side of the garden closest to the house is 12 feet long. I don't really care which side we're talking about as long as I know that one of the sides is 12 feet long. So I can cross out everything that talks about the side being closest to the house. That's not going to help me solve. Maybe you can change this to a side is 12 feet long, if that helps you read the question a little more clearly. Of the 2 missing sides, one of them is twice as long as the other. All of that information is pretty important. We have 2 missing sides that we're talking about, and we have also the relationship between them. One of them is twice as long as the other. And then, of course, the last sentence is our question, so we do not want to cross that out. So from here we have a triangle. The perimeter is 60 feet. A side is 12 feet long. Of the 2 missing sides, one of them is twice as long as the other. Now that we've simplified our text, we're going to go ahead and write equations from the text. Step 1 is to assign variables. We have 2 missing sides here. So I'm going to let x be side number 1 that we're missing, and I'm going to let y be side number 2. Now that we've identified what we're solving for, we can go ahead and draw a picture that might be helpful. So I have my garden or my triangle. The perimeter of the garden is 60 feet. I can't really add that to my picture quite yet. A side of the garden is 12 feet long, so I'm going to call one of my missing sides 12 feet. Of the 2 missing sides, one of them is twice as long as the other. Well, I know that x is side number 1 and y is side number 2. But I also know that of these 2 missing sides, one of them is twice as long as the other. So instead of writing y, I can say that y is actually 2 times x. And that's going to help me narrow down my variables. Instead of having 2 different ones, I'm going to put everything in terms of x. Lastly, now that we have our picture, we can go back and include the fact that the perimeter of the garden is 60 feet. Perimeter of a triangle is simply adding all 3 sides, so side number 1 plus side number 2 plus side number 3, and that will give you your perimeter. So if I take side 1, that's 12, and I add side 2, that'll be x, and I add side number 3, that's 2x, I'm going to get a total of 60 feet, as can be found up in our question. We can simplify this down. 12 plus x plus 2x is 3x is equal to 60. Now that we've written an equation, you could proceed to solve. However, since my goal was to mark the text and use that to create a picture and an equation, I'm going to stop here and ask you to complete the next two on your own. In the bottom left and the bottom right-hand corner of your notes, you have two additional questions. I would like for you to please pause the video and take a moment to do these next two on your own. Practice marking the text as I've shown you here, and use that to create an equation that could be used to answer the question.